Good morning, everyone. I'm Heminda Jayaweera. Today we are going to talk about the innovation in education, especially focusing on Sri Lankan education system. So we have today Dr Sanjeewa Maithripala from University of Peradeniya. He's, of course, in addition to that, he's actually the Director Education Innovation at Sri Lanka Technological Campus. And so what we are going to talk about is the education system, Sri Lankan education system, of course, and then also how it has to be changed in the future, looking at the global changes. So Sanjeewa, so tell me a little bit about how education system globally has changed, evolved, maybe from the very old historical time, and also how it has changed, and also maybe how it should be in the future.
Okay, so actually, so if we really go back to how this formal education took place, mostly it has been centered around some social objective or a political objective. At the same time, there have been schools, institutions that have been studying and investigating and exploring and creating knowledge. But when we come to this formal education dissemination process, it has mostly been up until recently based on information dissemination. So
Yes.
education has been mostly a one-way process. That was mostly because we did not have at that time, at least about even 20-30 years ago, access to education material, information was limited. And you had to either resort to a book or you had to resort to somebody reading a book and disseminating that knowledge in
Like
a one-way fashion, like teacher. So this was the way that actually things were done even 1,000 years ago, even in a university, the university that is considered to be the most modern university called University of Bologna in Italy. Right. And there is a picture, actually there is a mural where it shows how a teacher is presenting his or her ideas, and
Right.
the students are in a classroom listening to the teacher, and you would see a typical classroom of yesterday. Actually, even 1 year ago, where some people are talking to each other, people are bored
Before
with
the COVID
each other.
time,
Yeah, before the COVID time.
yes.
Yeah, people would be, so people are distracted, bored, but there was no other choice. That was the only source of information, and you had to do it, and whether you liked it or not. Even when I went to the university in 1996, 1992, there were only 4 textbooks, and we had 300 students in a batch, and there was no chance that I would get hold of that book. So there was no other way.
This is before internet time, right?
Before internet time. There was no other way but to go to a lecture and take down notes and then go home and maybe read it and do so whatever. But right now the situation has drastically changed because information is at your fingertips at any time you want, and also the variety of material that you have access to is unprecedented.
So with that, how a modern classroom should look at? So for example, as you mentioned, there is information is now available, right? But then still the teacher should be there. But then with that context, how the real education delivery should happen nowadays? Maybe, I mean, we can take some examples from maybe outside Sri Lanka. So Sanju, tell me about how it has evolved now.
So like I said, so just to continue from where I talked about, at one time it was mostly the role of the teacher was just information dissemination, one-way process.
Right.
And the role of the student was to somehow get that information and digest it, in a sense, or internalize it, or what you call learning. But learning, those who have been good at learning, if you look at it from 2,500 years, 5,000 years ago, is entirely a process. It is not just digesting information or just collecting information, but it has been an iterative process where those who have learned well, if you look at it from these philosophers to religious leaders to thinkers to scientists, you look at them, they have been going through this iterative process.
Okay. Right.
Of learning, unlearning, observing,
Right.
and then generalizing. And so that is a highly involved process where you can't just, information is only one small, very, very small aspect of it.
Right.
But you have to actually, people have demonstrated that it is very important to reflect upon what you are thinking about, and then actually go through the process of reinventing the whole thing over and over again, then refining it, going back and forth about along this cycle. So for this, what is important, I think, is have enough time for reflection and also for collaboration, because you need to brainstorm your ideas with colleagues,
Right.
as well as with somebody who may have thought a little bit more about this stuff and has a little more experience in this. So I think it is nothing new. It has always been the case where people actually have gone through this process of reflecting, reinventing, then discussing, then going back to yourself, trying things out, things failing, learning it, and this iterative entire process is nothing new.
Okay.
But unfortunately, in modern formal education, that aspect was lost for a long time, because maybe due to lack of resources and trying to cater to large number of people and having very strict and rigid curricula and objectives, it was lost, and it had boiled down to just information dissemination. So the role of the teacher was to just collect information, disseminate information, and evaluate students. And there was no collaboration, real collaboration for the learning process between teachers and students, or between teachers or between students. So I think what is changing now is people, due to access of information, due to the fact that information is very freely available, and that the diversity is freely available, and also now there's this third medium, the internet, that allows people to interact with people instantly across the globe and ask questions. You have forums, you have you have chats, and you like Quora, you post a question, then you have all this stack exchange kind of thing. So there are ways of collaborating without even having known who you are collaborating with. So this is happening, but still that kind of collaboration is slow to come into the formal education system in most part of the world, but not everywhere. Especially in Sri Lanka. So there's I see a big resistance to it on one hand, maybe because you're not familiar. Most of the people in the system itself have not gone through such a system. So we tend to believe that what we have gone through is the best thing that is possible, and that's a human nature. Yes. So then you are reluctant to change this, and you also
try to replicate the same.
You try to replicate the same because I would think that's a natural human tendency to believe that what you have got is the best that.
Yes. So Sanjeev, you mentioned very important thing, that is this collaboration. So what you suggest is that education is like a team game. Is it? It has to be like it's not about just the teacher, but then you have to, as a team, you have to speak to your colleagues. So is that the way forward?
Yes, I think it is the way forward, and it is time tested. I believe it is time tested. If you look at all these, where these scientific ideas have come up, even like Einstein didn't come up with all his theories by himself in a vacuum. Correct. It was a lot of discussion, lot of workshops that.
Lot of arguments.
And if you look at it, he has been interacting with all the contemporary scientists at that time. It was not a effort in isolation.
Correct. Yes.
So it is. So learning happens best when we brainstorm, when we argue about things, when we ask the question: is it true? Why not this? Why this?
Why the other way around?
Why the other way around? Can we do it differently?
Correct.
Is that the only way to look at it? So that comes with diversity.
And then very important thing now, so we talks about this whole university concept everywhere in the world. So I mean, in Sri Lanka, I think a lot of people think university is a classroom where a teacher comes and teach you, and the students, they learn, and then at the end of the day, whatever the semester or a term, they do exam and they get a degree. But actually, university concept is not that.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of other things, right? It's not about just learning, but then there's creation of knowledge.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to creation of knowledge, I think that discussion is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
In a university is kind of, if you just go by the word, I suppose it's a kind of a universal experience kind of idea that you have from a university education. But unfortunately, now, especially in countries like Sri Lanka, university education has been restricted to merely employment opportunity, or just way
of getting a certificate or something.
Getting a certificate. That's all.
Yeah.
And it's not the holistic experience that anybody would look for, most people would look for.
Right.
So, part of the university experience is academic,
Yes.
but a bigger part, I would think, is this collaborative aspects as well as the non-academic involvement in things.
And creating knowledge.
Creating knowledge.
Yes.
Creating knowledge is the, so that is the, yeah. So I believe we have to actually, the best way to learn, that is how I have done it, and I have seen most people who have done it well have actually recreated the knowledge. It
Right.
could be, well, it is existing, but you have to put yourself in the shoes and ask, how did this person think of this?
Yes.
And then you go through the process. And why is it that important? Because eventually you may come up with something that is brand new. So you may be inventing things that is 1,000 years old, 500 years old. Then if you continue to do this, you will be good at it, and you will soon realize that you are reinventing things that is only 6 months old.
Right.
Or this is, then you may stumble into something that is brand new. So this is actually, this idea is not mine. It's actually Richard Feynman's in his lecture, the Feynman lectures. He says,
famous Feynman. Right?
yeah. So he says, so people ask me, why do you always reinvent, in the sense rederive everything? And so his answer was, what he would do is he would try it on his own, and if he fails, then he would open a book.
Okay, right.
And then he would find that he would have done things a little differently. He's stuck because he has missed some point, and he continued to do this, and he said, soon you find that you have invented something that nobody has
done it. But it has to be, it's not, I mean, in a few seconds or a few days, but it has to repetitively, you have to do it.
You have to do it. You have to train yourself to do it. I don't believe anybody is, maybe you have a slight edge, but everybody, I believe, has to train yourself to learn. But if it is just collecting information, if you restrict education to just a matter of collecting information, it is completely obsolete. And I think it is pretty clear to everybody right now why it is. Because if you ask me a particular question, I can just quickly Google it and find many aspects about it. Not only you and me, our 5-year-old kids, 6-year-old kids, who they know how to do this. And so information, at one time information was important because access to it was not that free.
Yeah.
So then governments, institutions, everybody, so that was a big part of education. It is no longer, because it is there. Now how do you use it? Or how do you recreate knowledge? How do you create new knowledge is the most important thing.
Correct.
So then I think we have no option but to actually focus on this.
So that's what a university should be doing.
A university should be doing that. And while they are doing it, so you provide opportunities for people to collaborate. So collaboration doesn't happen so you don't meet people only in a classroom. So maybe when you, in the athletic field, you meet people. When you try to do a drama, you meet people. So you meet people from different backgrounds. And then maybe they think differently. They bring in their, whatever they have learned, whatever they are studying, they bring into the picture. So then you think, okay, it is not only in engineering. For example, my background is in engineering. But then you would say, okay, this system is not only in engineering, it is in biology, it is in agriculture, it is in environment, everywhere. So you start seeing them really. And then, so it is important that we get the opportunity to collaborate. So for that, the university should provide the opportunity to actually mingle with as many people as possible, give the opportunity to do things collaboratively outside the curriculum and do things possible. Because why? Eventually they may get together to actually be involved in curricular activity as well.
So the collaboration, what you are meaning is, it's not about, say if you are doing engineering at, say, University of Peradeniya, the collaboration is not only among engineering students or engineering academics.
Yeah.
You are talking about a little bit more than that.
I'm actually talking a lot more than that. I think, and if you really think of these foreign universities, they have this. I did my PhD in the US. So in the US, all students would, like, if you have these basic calculus courses, engineering students, physics students, biology students, mass communication students all sit in the same class and learn the calculus the same way.
Even art students.
Even art students, even mass communication students, even those who do sports.
Okay.
For everybody, this pre-calculus, calculus and things are like that were compulsory. So even they would come. Even like we would have these huge American football players who would come and they would be bored and they would be wondering why the hell am I doing it? But they were doing it in the same class, and we would not know who is from which field they are, and so you start talking.
So different faculties or different schools, students coming from different faculties and schools studying in the same classroom.
In the same classroom.
Okay.
So I think that is very important because and also it brings so those students would ask, I really don't understand any of this. What is this? I don't know how is 2 + 3 5, and so people would ask questions like that.
Right.
And then there would be a physics major student who would be utterly bored because that student has already done all of this.
Yes.
But there is this because of this diversity that is inside the class itself. That is very important, and a lot of discussion happens, a lot of questions.
Collaborations happens with a very diverse set of students.
I have had even at University of Peradeniya, I had the privilege of actually moving around, and so
because
most
a lot of faculties,
meeting a lot of other people. To date, I am very friendly with them. And they are from the dental faculty, medical faculty, agriculture faculty. Why? Because we had things called Explorers Club, we had Ramsock, and we had sports. And so you meet all these other people and you develop lifelong friendships. Not only that, actually right now, if I want to, right now for various things, I know that, okay, this guy is doing this, so we talk to each other, and there's a lot of knowledge sharing that is happening, and we would get together and talk about what's going on, and that would actually influence what I am going to do. Even so, you really can't put your finger and say this happened because of this, but this diversity gives you a big picture, and gives you a way of thinking outside your comfort zone, mostly. So it is.
So I'll come to that university life part a bit later. But Sanjeewa, tell me about the curriculum, which is a lot of people talks about whether we should be teaching the same curriculum. Now, in modern day, how should the curriculum should be focused on? Whether it should be looking at a particular job or particular, say if you are doing mechanical engineering, should be looking at a specific mechanical engineering job. How should the curriculum should change in terms of the evolution of the entire world, how the world is going in the 21st century? How should we look at it?
So if we just think of how things are proceeding, it is pretty evident to all of us from what we see right now because of the access to information.
Yes.
And there are many studies done by institutions like the World Economic Forum. There are other institutions like McKinney Institute of Science who go through all this data. Institutions themselves trying to see whether they are producing the best graduates, best competitive graduates are doing studies. So if you look at all these studies, what they are identifying is that shrinking of specializations is occurring.
Shrinking of
specialization.
Okay.
What I mean, the number of specializations, I should say.
Okay.
So what I mean is, at one time there were a lot of specializations, and people would target to be a specialist, and you would be extremely good at that thing. And the expectation was, okay, so a few specialists would get together and do something together. That was what group work meant. That is what collaboration meant.
Okay.
So I would not know anything that you did. I would know very little of that. All I know is that you do that, and you have very little idea of what I did. So we rely on each other to do this, whatever the collaborative thing that is necessary to get a product out or an idea out or a service out.
Right.
But right now, things are changing because we have come to a point in science itself where pretty much they say innovation is dead in the field of science because nothing major. We have not hit anything major innovation in science for the last 100 years. So everything is pretty much known right now. So then where you are looking for is at a very extremely fundamental level, which is at the level of atoms or at the level of galaxies and at the level of unseen and unimaginable. Right. So when that comes, it is common to everybody. So engineering is also now at that point. Medicine is also at that point. Chemistry, physics, you name it, everybody is now at that point. Now even if you talk about environmentalists, they are actually thinking of how these systems are working and they also go into this micro level looking at things. So what is becoming important is that you understand the fundament. Irrespective of what you are doing, the problems seem to be common and you seem to need a good understanding of all the basic fundamentals. Okay. So basic fundamentals would be science, mathematics, computing, economics, management and finance and things like that. So it is no longer possible for me to completely ignore economics. Because whatever I do should have an economic impact and is completely governed by economics. Otherwise, it will just be idea that is sitting down somewhere and it will not generate any revenue, it will not be of any use. And if I am not producing anything useful, I will be also useless. Yes. Because people would look for people who are doing useful things.
So you are maybe looking at something new, but still nobody is using it.
Nobody is using it. Because if it is not economical, because right now there are no groundbreaking innovations that are happening in the field of science unless I revolutionize science and say, okay, this is not how things happen, this is not how the universe works, but this is this whole brand new theory. Everything else that everybody else is doing is delta small things. So this is really, we are not doing anything brand new. So then what is important is how we put these together to do something useful.
So in that context now, say for example, if a student is entering a university, what kind of skills that he should be learning in a university? Is it, say if you talk, I mean, of course, there could be, say if it is mechanical engineering, there could be fully mechanical engineering related subject, but other than that, or mostly, what he or she should be learning?
So I am a believer that fundamental are the most important thing, because that is the most difficult to learn, because they require a whole lot of machinery that you have to construct. It is not easy. There's a whole lot of learning, unlearning that needs to happen before you can master a fundamental. Right. So learning fundamentals by yourself is difficult. But if you are to get a very highly specialized contextual subject or a topic or an idea, that is pretty easy to do because it is already out there. And if you have the fundamentals, it is just a matter of time for you to yourself build it, construct it. Right. So the building blocks that are necessary for constructing this are the fundamental. So that is why everybody focus on fundamental, whatever the field that we are doing. And there was this study that shows on one axis you have the math skills, and on the other axis you have the social skills. Right. And if you look at it at the right top corner, what you find is financial analysis and accountants and physicians. So we would not think that a physician would need mathematical skills, but it is not true, because it is by developing that way of thinking that you develop this deductive power of reasoning things out and maybe identifying illness. So that is all. It's a whole lot of reasoning that goes into this. It's not only information.
So even for medical science, you need mathematics.
I believe why you need mathematics is not just to solve an integral or to use it directly to do anything. But by doing mathematics, you wire your neurons in your brain to think differently. And that training is essential. So that is why it is essential to learn biology. It is not to get an A for biology, but to learn how biological systems are working and how you go about studying that way of thinking, that branch. So it is important, and economics, and it's not really the economic theories or whatever the contextual thing that is important, but that way of thinking, it doesn't come overnight, and that can't be given. That is difficult to get by yourself. I think almost everybody would agree. So then, if that is the difficult thing, in a university, I think we should concentrate on the fundamentals and make sure that everybody, irrespective of their background, should get that fundamental.
Or field of study.
Because that is why that is important is, let's say you can easily branch off. You can do engineering and you can become a top economist. And I have known people actually, I know individuals also who have done that, who have
19-year-old coming to university, he might think that he is good at maths, but maybe his real talent may be lying somewhere else.
And his liking for maths and everything, you can become a fantastic. So right now people don't know how much mathematics is necessary to be a real good economist.
Exactly.
And because it's about predicting, it's about modeling. Modeling scientific things are easy, because they are almost always, unless you go to the microscopic level, it is pattern. It is predictable. Yes. It can be experimentally verified. You can always do that. But social systems, economic systems,
no pattern
whatsoever. So it is extremely difficult.
Chaotic, right?
And right now, what is very interesting is you have tons of data. You have ways of collecting data through IoT systems, and so you have you are inundated with data. But data itself is just like a useless thing. It is, but if you know how to use that data,
right.
Now how do you do that? You can't just be good at statistics to extract some data from a bunch of data about economics. You have to be good at economics also.
Okay. Yeah. Correct.
And
you don't know what to
you don't know what it is. Just numbers. It's just fields. It is just columns. You don't know what it means. And then let's say it is about something to do with technology. Then it is very good if you have a technology background. You have a mathematical science, statistics background. If you know how to do computing, and on top of that, if you are an economist, you are in business, because you can actually see patterns. So patterns still. Brute force pattern seeing is possible using neural networks, but even to get a neural network to work, it's art, and behind that you always have a human. That is why. So right now the split between any task in a workplace is now about 60%, close to 60% done by machines, and 40% by humans, and that is now accelerated due to this COVID. That would have now escalated to even more.
So very important point, Sanjeev. So you said now 60% of work is done by a machine, or some sort of a mechanical form, or some kind of a man-made thing. So in that context, if I am a say 19-year-old student just entering a university, what kind of jobs that I should be looking at, say maybe next 5 to 10 years? What sort of jobs that I should be targeting at? Or what should be, let's say in a different way, what should I learn?
Yeah.
What kind of things that I should learn to get a good job?
So that is, I think that is the most important thing, that everybody, including us at higher education institutions, as well as these people who are knocking on the door of adulthood and adult learning, should think of. And so the shortest answer given by former Stanford Dean is you should be able to do what machines can't do. Otherwise, you will be obsolete. And this was done in the first IEEE summit in 2017 in Singapore. I can't remember his name, but there is this fantastic video where he actually he talks about these things. And why that summit was held was because in 2017 they identified that there is going to be a dramatic shift in engineering. So all these big giants in IEEE got together, and in this he gave the plenary, Stanford Dean, and he was saying, look at this, see what is happening. So the trend of automation is going to take away a lot of jobs unless you can do what a machine can't do. So what a machine...
Can you give some examples? Of course things will change, but say next 10, 20 years, what are the areas that a machine will not be able to do?
Right now, what machines are not as good as humans are about critical thinking, imagination.
Okay.
And perceiving. So it can recognize patterns well, it can do things fast, like extremely fast. Something that a human would take 100 years, machine can do in probably in a few seconds.
Yes.
And the technology has come to that level. This human learning that we are doing is not possible.
Correct.
So if we are to be better than a machine, we should be good at learning. We should be good at creativity. We should be good at critical thinking, problem solving, and also working in groups and finding the correct people to collaborate with. And also another thing that is right now happening is actually how do you as a human balance your well-being, your psychological and physical well-being is also going to be very important. Because it is going to influence everything that you are going to do. Exactly. So I think these are right now identified to be the most crucial skills. And if you notice, it has nothing to do with whether you are going to be a doctor, whether you are going to be an engineer, architect, or whatever. It has nothing to do with it. Because these are innate human skills. And so on top of that, you give everybody a very sound basic background. It will be just eventual. It's just you will need to spend some time to be somebody highly skilled or highly proficient in a field that you are not which was not your basic background. I know Sri Lankan scientists in University of Virginia, I believe. He got the highest marks in biology.
Really?
The biology field in Sri Lanka at somewhere around the 80s. Right now, he's a top physicist doing particle physics kind of things in the US.
So complete overhaul of their
overhaul. So, but I am pretty sure his initial background of thinking about things differently is influencing his way of thinking, and so that is why we need to get this whole broad fundamentals. So you, on top of the fundamentals, you learn in a critical way by questioning all the time, by collaborating with others, and by reflecting on your own, rather than just merely memorizing your facts. Memorizing is completely obsolete. Pretty soon, everybody is going to have open book.
Absolutely, yes.
And even from an exam point of view, open book.
Yes.
So then nobody is going to ask you whether you remember some obscure fact, or whether you, even now in most, even at the current, very few people actually expect students to memorize formulas. They would actually at least provide it. But say for example, so if I give a paper-based exam, it is very limited things that I can check. I can't check whether the student can do any analysis. I can't check whether a student can extrapolate. Why? Because you can't do any of that without doing a modeling part, doing a calculation part. So within 3 hours, you can't do anything significant. It's only a small calculation that you can do. So you can only test, even in a paper-based setup, a very, very minute fraction of capability.
Exactly.
Whereas if you allow the student to do it online, and if you tell the student you can use any device you want, I am also challenged to find out things or ways of
books or whatever.
Do anything you want. You even want to talk with students and do it, but don't copy. In the sense, don't reproduce the work of somebody else.
Yeah, we call it one-to-one copying.
One-to-one copying. As long as so this is actually, even I'm a little familiar with the US universities, and the top universities almost all have take-home exams, and so the integrity is top. So they have this high emphasis on integrity. So people naturally tend to not to copy, but they are allowed to discuss. But you are not supposed to take one and just write it down one-to-one.
You are not testing what you usually do by copying, right? You are not testing that capability.
You are not testing that. Yes. So what are those things? Those are these things of critical thinking, whether you know how to learn, whether you know how to extrapolate, and things like that, whether you know how to invent and things like that. So how can you, we practically can't test something like that in a paper-based exam within 3 hours. How can you? It is impossible, I would think.
Yeah. So you are talking about this very important thing, that is, you need to, I mean, if it's in university or maybe even school education system, you have to give a lot of emphasis into this creative thinking, all these factors, which
because those are the things that a machine cannot do. It is simple logic.
Exactly.
So if you don't do that, if you continue to learn something that can be repeated, it is either already been done or not. So even at school, we have to we have to focus on that. So there's this fantastic TED talk by Sugata Mitra, which was where he talks about this modern education system that we are undergoing.
Okay.
And so what he has this very interesting take from the beginning itself,
Okay.
where he says, so this was the way of the empire. If this was the way of the British,
Okay.
to maintain this fantastic machinery of the entire empire that was
Okay.
at that time
Okay.
all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, what was necessary was to have a skilled workforce that could execute orders to the letter.
Okay. So working like a factory or
Working like a like, so you just regulations, check regulations, check compliance,
Yes.
do this and do that, and so just go through this very rigid process. And so I think we are still stuck in that.
I mean, school system also like
School
that.
system is we are still stuck
there's
in
a
that.
time, there's a batch that is always produced every batch.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then the interval system, there's a bell.
Yeah, everything is
like a factory system.
Everything is like a factory system. So you are creating people who are good at executing orders and nothing else. No thinkers.
No thinkers.
Because having thinkers would have been extremely difficult if you were to maintain an empire.
Manage an empire, yes.
So you don't want that.
Yes.
So, but that is very good. They were very innovative people.
Yes.
So they came
Those
up with an
days.
education system that sustained their
Empire.
empire. But it is no longer the case. So why are the empire is no longer there? That's what the guy is saying.
Yeah.
So why are we still
Following the same.
maintaining an education system that was built to sustain an empire like that?
Correct.
So he has it's a very nice
TED talk, is it?
nice TED talk done in 2012 or something.
Right.
Long.
So Sanjeevan, now coming back to this whole things about opening up and thinking about the creativity and all that, how important the university life for a student? I mean, not just studying the entire 6 or 7 hours of the lectures, but focusing on a lot of other things, maybe doing sports, clubs and societies, interactive sessions, whatever that is. How important that is for that particular areas that you mentioned, which is the real need for somebody to learn these days.
So again, I think it is extremely crucial.
Crucial.
One is actually it is through example that sometimes mostly that we learn. So by being exposed to people of different fields,
Right.
different backgrounds,
Right.
you see examples of people thinking differently.
Right.
So that is on one aspect that is important. Other aspect is like by doing these things, you are thinking of something else. Mostly you are not thinking of what you are like the academic work or anything, and you would be surprised how many people say that this idea struck to me when I was in a train or in a flight
Yes.
or under a tree. And so why is that? That is because
Like Isaac Newton. Right?
yeah, like Isaac Newton, and then so even I think people like all these famous scientists, if you read their biographies, they go for long walks.
Yeah. Right.
And that is their reflective time. Rather than otherwise, if you have a pen and a paper, you are always doing things. You are always doing things. It is only when you have this free mind that you think out of the box. So it is extremely important to do that. So maybe you might even what you are learning, something might strike you when you are in a movie theater, or watching a drama or a student performance or something. And so I think, but unfortunately the thing is, it is not tangible. So you can't really say it is because of this. There is no way of measuring that, because this is an indirect impact. But there are a lot of studies that if we really want to, I have not done these studies, even looked at them, but I am pretty sure if we look around, we will find that there's a lot of high correlation between all of this and output and things like that. So, and well, obviously it contributes to leadership development skills, group work, and all social interactions. All of that is very good, but you need this other life in order to actually
Excel
be even in the critical thinking and all this. To be an innovative thinker, you need this other life. It is
The
only
balance
with
of-
that balance.
balance of life,
It is actually, I wouldn't even say balance. It is actually that what contributes to, maybe fuels this.
Correct.
Because it is that
Correct.
that break, that thing that fuels you. But it's not always, it's not sports all the time, it is not drama or music or aesthetics all the time. It is something that is different from what you are doing,
What you've been doing.
what your core thing is. So just to keep your mind out of that.
Right.
So when that is happening, maybe something might ignite in your brain about what you are actually thinking of solving.
So Sanjeewa, getting back to the last stage of our discussion, now you are the director of education innovation at Sri Lanka Technological Campus. So in this light, what you have been doing to change the entire education delivery of Sri Lanka Technological Campus? If you can just brief about certain changes that has been done and been in progress in these days.
So actually this whole thinking that we were discussing
Yes.
has been at the foundation of what we have planned for and trying to execute at SLTC. So recently there is a overall a curriculum overhaul, a program overhaul, and actually I would not like to say teaching, but it's a learning environment overhaul that is happening. And all of that is actually rooted in everything that the two of us talked about. And first let me talk about the programs. So I think we want to do this, so this was first tried out in Stanford, where students were allowed the opportunity to build their own programs. So the Stanford Dean from electrical engineering.
Build your own program by a student.
By a student.
Okay.
So you enter.
Okay.
And you graduate. It is only at the time of graduation that you know what you have. So it's called build your own program.
Wow. Okay.
So and that is one. So he tried it out and it was a tremendous success, I believe. And then now if you actually take a step back and now think of it. Now these fantastic education platforms like edX, Coursera are offering degrees which are affordable, and they are also build your own programs. Because they have a way of identifying domains, subdomains, and classifying courses by skill.
Okay.
So if I go and just say these are the skills that I'm interested, it would recommend a whole bunch of courses that I should
pick and choose.
Right. To get my skills.
Right.
That I am interested in.
Right.
So that flexibility now these online platforms are offering for real, and if you look at it, like 60 million students are enrolled in these platforms, and they are doing it. So now you have the freedom. You don't have to be rigidly enslaved into one particular field.
Yes.
So that is why it is important that you have the fundamentals. That is why it is important that you have this, you be good at critical thinking and the ability to learn.
So what Sanjeewa mentioned is that the student comes to university, maybe of course fundamental he has to learn, but then at the end of the day he can decide what's the degree that he's getting or what's the specialization.
What is the specialization that the student is getting.
Right.
So maybe you come from a background of commerce for your high school or A-levels. But you can graduate, become an engineer. Maybe it might not take only 4 years, it may take 5 years, but that opportunity is there.
So now SLTC has that capability?
That right now, no, because SLT is also bound by the government regulations, by UGC regulations, and it is actually, that is the only bottleneck that is preventing SLTC from doing it. But we are going to offer the opportunity where a student can at least do some foundation courses and then satisfy the entry requirements for a particular discipline, irrespective of the high school background or the A-level background that you are coming from.
Right.
So that is why the fundamentals are important. So we are introducing at SLTC a concept called institutional core, where every student that graduates from SLTC will have to complete courses from the institutional core.
Right.
And that is about 30 credits. And think of it like from 120 to 150 course structure, there is 30 credits that every student will take, irrespective of your background.
Field of specialization.
Field of specialization. So, and those 30 credits involve mathematics. There are about 12 mathematics credits, and not 12, I think science and mathematics both together have about 12 credits. Right. Then you have economics, then you have management, then you have humanities, and then you have computing. So those are the we have identified a set of fundamental courses, and they will guarantee that every student who graduates from SLTC will be at least one level above the A-level student, any A-level student from Sri Lanka, because they would be exposed to all the fundamental fields at least one level above. That's the target.
Right. Okay.
But the difference is, so in an economics course, you will find music students, all these students. So again, this is nothing new. It's been tried out everywhere.
That you mentioned, but now it's at SLTC. You get that different kind of students from different fields studying in the same classroom.
In the same classroom.
Okay. Wow.
And so you have final year students from maybe engineering and first year students from the business schools, both in the same class, learning management or learning economics. And we have this policy where we don't want to identify the student even. So the students don't know which field the neighbor is from, or the teacher doesn't know which field so you can't customize. You can't teach mathematics like for engineers or science specialized in students. You have to. So again, this model is not new. It has been tried out elsewhere, but it is completely novel to Sri Lanka. And so there is an institutional core, and there is something called a school core, where every school will have a core, and that school core will guarantee, if you don't have the necessary background to do these other multidisciplinary subjects, you will be able to take those school core and also go one step beyond that. So you will be. So we have designed a course structure that has about 60% that is fundamentals. Then the rest is what is field specialization.
Right.
So this actually will allow students to, in some sense, build their own program.
For that 40%. Yeah.
Yeah, because so you can but that is where you will develop a specific skill-based identification.
Right.
But that is sufficient, and if we have carefully looked at it, it is totally in line with all accreditation processes, IEEE, Washington Accord, all these things. It is completely in line with them. So, and you have this massive freedom and
real freedom of education.
Real freedom of education, irrespective of the background that you come with.
Exactly.
It will be so. Again, you may, like, let's say up to the third year of fifth, sixth semester, you may decide you want to do something else. But now we have provided a flexible structure so that you don't have to go all the way back and start.
Right.
You can come back down the trees and go from here. Yeah. So maybe you may have to spend one semester more or 2 semesters more, but not a whole 4 years.
Entire course, yes. Okay. So you can branch out at any particular time.
At any particular. So that is what we believe is a true multidisciplinary student,
right,
who is capable of working in any fundamental field. Right. Sure, you need to put some effort. But that's also again why we try to ensure that they are good critical thinkers and they are good learners. So if you are good at both those things and you have the fundamental, which is the difficult thing to learn, any contextual driven thing is just a matter of time, because all that resources are so freely available. Right. You don't even have to pay a cent to learn those things. They are available on the
And on this new model, I think technology plays a big role, right? So how does technology plays at SLTC? How technology is being used for education delivery, and maybe the same things that you mentioned, collaborative learning, how that is being done at SLTC?
So right now we are extensively using technology in all these 3 aspects. The first was about the program. So in the programs, we are designing programs so that actually the program outcomes can be quantified. It is not just qualified. So we are developing a mapping process, a competency framework where you actually can map it. So you get a number and you get a depth level based on the various taxonomies. At SLTC we adopt the solo taxonomy, and based on that we can actually come up with a number for each of the disciplines or each of the program outcomes or each of the skills of a program, and we will have a numerical way of actually identifying depth and breadth of a course.
So program outcome is the word.
Program outcomes, yes. The expectations that we have from a graduating student for a given program. So this will help us design a program well, which is good, the breadth is good and the depth is good. So that is underway. It is processes are underway, and policies have already been drafted. The curriculum development process and the program revision process is happening based on these ideas. So that is underway. Second is academic delivery, in the sense how do we get the students to be engaged in the academic activities. So there is a, so I hate to use the word teacher, but we have facilitators, we would like to call them, and who would facilitate the this learning process. So there are, so like we, going back to the beginning, information is everywhere.
Yes.
So we believe there is no point in getting 40 students into a class and having a lecture.
Correct.
That would be utter waste of time of everybody. Why? Because now the technology is there and everybody is so used to it already. That lecture can be video recorded. You can add interactive activities to that, so that you ensure that the students actually listen to it or do something and answer something that can go to the grade, so that teacher actually knows whether the student is actually involved in it, which is impossible to do in a physical classroom of 40 students where a lecturer is doing a 1 hour lecture. You can't, there's no way. Physically, I have about 20 years of experience. It is absolutely impossible to do that monitoring. But now this monitoring is possible, because now if you do that online, we are able to monitor the microscopically monitor every single activity that a student does.
Right. And they do that in their own time.
They do it on their own time. The one-way information dissemination.
Right.
So you go through that, and we have designed a lesson plan that will be delivered through learning management systems online, so technology. And so all these learning activities and resources will be mapped to the outcomes. And the student will be engaged in it, and so we have a way of monitoring that engagement. And so at the end of the day, eventually we will have a system where we will know whether a student has what is the percentage of a particular outcome that a student has achieved at what level.
So where does the facilitator or the teacher get involved?
Yeah, so that is a very important.
Yes.
So that aspect is also there. So there is a session. So that can be either online. We call it interactive sessions or synchronized sessions. So they can be either online or physical or a hybrid mode. So if you want, you can come to the physical classroom and do it, or if you want, you can stay outside and do it, or so it's up to you. And the whole purpose of that is actually collaboration, exclusively collaboration.
Collaboration between the students and teamwork, all that.
Yeah. So the teacher is to ensure whether the students are collaborating, facilitating that.
Okay.
Facilitating whether the two students are collaborating with each other.
So teacher has a responsibility to see that it happens.
See that it happens.
Right.
In this synchronized session.
Right.
Whether it happens, and the teacher also has the role of designing that course content and the teaching learning activities on the LMS. So that is not an easy task. And monitoring it and seeing, assigning group work and like forums or group activities, all of that can be done through the LMS, and it can be monitored. So the teacher gets instantaneous feedback.
Okay.
But you also provide that opportunity for the student to, if you want to have a one-on-one session.
Right.
And
with the teacher.
With the teacher or with, as well as the student.
As well.
So these interactive sessions are no longer sessions where people, they just come and listen to a lecture, or just copy down something that is written on a board or a PowerPoint presentation.
Zoom session 1-to-1.
No.
Yeah, one-to-many or whatever.
That's also not the purpose.
Not the
So
purpose.
it has to be either you are doing something, you have to be working, you have to be discussing. So this is again nothing new. If you look at like few years ago, I was talking about this classroom where even you and I may have been in such classrooms where we have a lecturer, we have 100 students, we are just listening, and
no
lecturer would come and write it from the. It is also impossible. You have 100 students. If 100 students ask questions, nothing is going to happen. Even that information dissemination will not happen.
Yes.
But that was the way of teaching and learning that happened in University of Bologna in 1088 also. It even happened until 1 year ago. But now things were things were forced to be changed, and this kind of collaboration is also again nothing new. If you go to classroom in Europe or in the US, you would find that the focus on the teacher is no longer there. You can't find the teacher, and you don't find all students to be doing the same thing. Some are looking at a computer, 2 of them are talking, 2 of them are writing on a book, and all this is also happening. Right. So if we are to have the synchronous sessions, they should be interactive. They should be activity based. Students should be doing something. Now again, when you mean activity in the sense is not if your brain is dead and just dancing around, that is not activity. Activity is if your brain is active.
Right.
Even if you are seated, that's fine. If you are looking at something, but your brain should be active.
Right.
So how does the teacher ensure that interaction, activity in the brain itself?
Right.
And how do you encourage people to do it in a collaborative way? That is the role. It is difficult to do
This
because
active learning, is it?
active learning. So active learning is so the student gets actively involved in the learning process itself.
So that is now facilitated at SLTC.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And that's the policy.
Right.
And all teaching learning delivery is designed in such a way.
Right.
So where information dissemination and assessment are 100% online. Why? Because then students can do it on their own. There is no pressure, and you can evaluate to great depth.
Right.
And interactions are also monitored. So all of that is happening, and the physical interactions are also facilitated, where all that is actually kind of discouraged, completely discouraged, and you are supposed to have completely discussions or group work or sit together and do something or whatever.
So since we have a lot of technology being used, does it help to evaluate students or maybe evaluate the teacher performance and maybe the outcomes as you mentioned? So is it like much more, there's much better scope in that area also, like evaluation point of view?
I think it is, it gives you tremendous freedom
Right.
to actually evaluate the student achievement in a more meaningful sense.
Right.
Otherwise, if it was only paper based or a written time based examination, all you can do is at best verify whether a student has mostly, whether they have a good memorizing power,
Yes.
or on the other hand, do some few simple calculations. So we would say that is application. How can, I just don't believe you can do applications on a piece of paper.
So in a few hours, right?
In 3 hours, how can you test application? Where you are giving somebody a question and the student is just plugging in some numbers and you just, I don't know. It is
So this method is more closer to real life.
in real life,
scenarios,
yeah. And it is easily monitorable. That is the fantastic thing. And also, so since you provide this freedom, you are not time bound. You can give a larger time frame. You don't have to ask students to memorize. So you can say, for example, so I tried this model when I taught at University of Peradeniya last semester,
Right.
where I would give them assignments, a lot of assignments, and so at the exam, so they have access to all of that.
Okay.
But I verify things. I have, in the LMS you can do randomized questions, you can give formula based questions. So I give formula based questions randomized, so everybody gets a different number.
Right.
And but they have to know or get a small piece of coding that they have done for one of their assignments and run it and reproduce the number. Now that is impossible to do within a short period of time if they have not already done it. And so I get to see whether they have, who has really done it.
Done it during the entire
Period, who has been actually engaged in it.
Yes.
And I also see that through the activity monitoring in the LMS itself. And if I want another verification, this also is very closely related and correlated with their activities as well as the outcomes that are happening. And more than that, I have been able to, in my entire 20 years of teaching, been able to interact the most with my students the past semester. It was completely online.
Okay.
But I followed this session. So the model that I followed is similar to what we are applying here at SLTC.
So you see a difference. I mean, even though maybe a teacher has to do a little bit more work at the start, but you find that teaching itself is much more enjoyable.
Much more enjoyable. You feel that it is much more useful.
Right.
Because the students seem to be more, it is the same kind of classroom that I had done before, and I have usually had very high student ratings as feedback.
Right.
So I have taught first year courses where I have taught 400 students.
Right.
And I would still try to make it as interactive as possible. But the best that you can do is walk around, ask questions. But still, there was always something that was not coming out. But this mode actually was amazing because I could give the material beforehand.
Yes.
Then I had this, we have a nice tool called a forum. So I would ask students to post a forum. Everybody has to do that. That is part of the evaluation.
Okay.
Or answer somebody's question.
Right.
So before the interactive session, what I do is go through the forum. And I actually answer whatever I can do in a few lines, or if I see that there are common concerns, common misconceptions, it is those that I discuss at the interaction session and nothing else. Not my video lecture, not my lecture note, not the assignments, nothing. But there are students who start asking, and there are students who themselves start answering. That is collaboration between students and student. And I also answer, and in the classroom also I would say, okay, you had this question, can you please raise it here so that everybody, and we would discuss. Then I would ask, what do you think? You answered this, do you think that is right? What do you think about this? And I had a fantastic, I had the best interactive experience in my 20 years of teaching.
Wow.
So I firmly believe, and we are trying to adopt most of that actually. So it was similar to what we are trying over here.
Right.
And so assessments again online. So I am not restricted by saying I can't ask this in a 3-hour quiz, or can a student do it, because they are based on simulations. They run a simulation, and I ask specific things like at the time response of this system at 1 second. So you just can't get it unless you do the simulation. And it's going to be different from everybody to everybody. I can plug in the formula I can write a piece of code, and so could the students. But you can't do it overnight. Student has to work at it, and so the tools are there. So you have Google Docs, you have Google Collaboratory for collaborative coding, and you have Drive, and
tools are there.
Tools are, you name it, tools are there.
Yes. So thank you very much, Dr. Sanjeewa Maithripala. I think we had a very interesting discussion, not just on few things, but a lot of things, especially focusing on the education system and how it has to be evolved. And also in the latter part, we discussed how SLTC is utilizing those newer concepts at for students nowadays. So thank you very much, Dr. Maithripala. So let's join maybe on another day on different aspect, or maybe focusing on another area on education innovation. Thank you very much.
Thanks. It was fun talking about it.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.